The silence in the conference room felt like a physical weight pressing down on Adrian Phoenix's shoulders. 6 months after David's funeral, the world still moved in slow motion, colors muted, sounds distant. But today, that numbness had been replaced by a sharp, electric panic that sent his heart racing. The AI security system he'd built, the one that carried David's final code contributions, was destroying itself on screen before 400 investors. Adrian stood frozen at the podium, watching as Sentinel's shield unraveled line by line, its neural networks collapsing in a cascade of error messages. The sleek interface they'd spent years perfecting now displayed what looked like deliberate chaos, not random failure, but a targeted attack. "It's not supposed to do that," someone whispered, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. $50 million in potential funding, the last chance to save Phoenix AI from bankruptcy, the final living testament to David's brilliance. All of it evaporating in real time as Adrian's trembling fingers flew across the keyboard, desperately trying to halt the damage. 10 years ago, when his family had slammed the door in his face after he came out, Adrian had promised himself he would build something so magnificent they would regret rejecting him. Phoenix AI was that promise, a cybersecurity company that rose from his personal ashes, built with David at his front. Now it was crumbling, just like everything else in his life. "We're experiencing a technical difficulty," Adrian announced, his voice steadier than his hands. "I'll need 12 minutes. 12 minutes to save 5 years of work. 12 minutes to preserve the last thing he and David had created together. 12 minutes to prevent his homophobic parents from being right about him all along." As investors began to check their watches and whisper among themselves, Adrian noticed something odd in the attack pattern. This wasn't random. The adversarial attack displayed a signature he'd never seen before: elegant, almost artistic in its precision. Someone who understood their security architecture at a fundamental level had orchestrated this sabotage. But who would have both the skill and motivation to destroy Phoenix AI at its most vulnerable moment? Adrian's eyes scanned the conference room, wondering if the attacker was watching, perhaps sitting among the very investors he was trying to impress. The company's future, David's legacy, and Adrian's last chance at proving his worth all hung in the balance as the system continued to dismantle itself before his eyes. He had 11 minutes left to solve an impossible puzzle, with the weight of grief, rejection, and potential failure crushing down on him. For a moment, he considered surrendering to the inevitable collapse. Then his gaze fell on the small rainbow pin on his lapel, the one David had given him on their first anniversary. "Rise, one," David had whispered then. "Always rise." Adrian Phoenix took a deep breath and dove back into the code. Someone had broken his shields, but they didn't understand who they were dealing with. After all, a phoenix always rises from the ashes. Follow Heart Stories for more tales of resilience, transformation, and triumph against all odds. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Marcus Chen Rodriguez slipped through the Phoenix AI building like a shadow, the universal truth of invisibility working in his favor. People rarely notice the mixed Asian Latino teenager trailing behind his mother as she pushed her cleaning cart through the gleaming hallways. At 13, Marcus had perfected the art of being overlooked, eyes down, movements quiet, presence forgotten the moment he passed by. Maria Chen Rodriguez had worked as head janitor at Phoenix AI for nearly 2 years, taking the night shift to earn enough for their one-bedroom apartment in the forgotten corner of San Francisco. Every evening, she would bring Marcus with her, unable to afford childcare and unwilling to leave him alone in their neighborhood after dark. The building's security guards had long stopped questioning his presence, just the cleaner's kid doing homework in the break room. They assumed. What no one realized was that homework for Marcus had been finished hours earlier. Instead, his nimble fingers danced across a second-hand laptop while his mind absorbed the architecture of one of the most sophisticated AI security systems ever designed. Tonight, however, Marcus wasn't exploring the code for education. Panic flickered across his face as he recognized the distinctive signature of the attack unfolding on the main server, a pattern he had observed during his unauthorized explorations over the past 3 months. No, 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 he whispered, fingers flying across his keyboard, trying to isolate the intrusion. The timing couldn't be worse. He knew about the investor presentation scheduled for tomorrow. Everyone in the building had been talking about it for weeks. This wasn't a random glitch. It was a calculated strike designed to destroy Phoenix AI at its most vulnerable moment. The attack pattern seemed familiar, yet distorted like a melody played in a different key. Marcus had been studying the Sentinel shield code for months, admiring its elegant design, learning from its structure in ways his underfunded public school could never teach him. He knew this system intimately enough to recognize that whoever designed this attack also understood the code at a fundamental level. Earlier that day, walking through the hallways, Marcus had overheard two engineers discussing missing security logs anomalies that couldn't be explained. Their voices had grown hushed when they noticed him nearby. One had glared, as if his mere presence was suspect. Marcus had lowered his eyes and hurried past, the familiar sting of prejudice adding to his collection of similar moments. At school, it was the same story. Too smart for regular classes but lacking the resources for specialized programs. Too Asian for the Latino kids. Too Latino for the Asian ones. Always the outsider, always watching from the periphery as doors opened for others that remained firmly closed to him. But in code, Marcus found a language where none of that mattered. In the digital realm, he wasn't defined by his appearance or background or age, only by the elegance of his solutions and the depth of his understanding. Now, as the attack against Phoenix AI escalated, Marcus faced an impossible choice. Revealing his unauthorized access would likely result in criminal charges, destroying his future and devastating his mother. Staying silent meant watching the company collapse, taking with it the most beautiful code architecture he had ever studied and the jobs of hundreds of employees, including his mother's. His decision crystallized when the server logs revealed the attack source, a signature buried deep within the malicious code that pointed to an external origin. The pattern matched communications he'd observed weeks earlier, traffic that had raised his suspicions but seemed dormant until now. Marcus's eyes widened as he recognized a name embedded in the attack signature, hidden in plain sight among thousands of lines of destructive code: Thomas Phoenix. The connection sent a chill through him. Adrian Phoenix had a brother, a fact Marcus had discovered while researching the company founder's background. A brother who, according to old news articles, had publicly condemned Adrian years ago when he came out. The realization struck Marcus with clarity. This wasn't just corporate sabotage, it was personal. A family vendetta disguised as a technical failure, designed to force Adrian back into the shadows, to erase everything he had built. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He too lived in shadows, overlooked and underestimated. But sometimes being invisible meant seeing what others missed. As the attack accelerated toward irreversible damage, Marcus made his choice. Stepping into the light meant risking everything. But remaining hidden would make him complicit in a destruction born of the same prejudice he faced every day. Taking a deep breath, Marcus packed his laptop and headed toward the conference rooms, where he knew Adrian Phoenix would be preparing for tomorrow's presentation. It was time for the invisible genius to be seen, whatever the consequences might be. The true strength of character isn't measured by what we achieve when the world supports us, but by the courage we find when standing alone against injustice. In that moment, Marcus chose courage not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been pushed to the margins and told their voice didn't matter. The conference room had emptied except for Adrian Phoenix, who sat motionless before the darkened screen, the ghost of his failed demonstration still haunting the air. The investors had departed with tight smiles and empty promises to be in touch, the corporate equivalent of never calling again. $50 million. Evaporated. The company, effectively dead. All that remained was the paperwork of failure. When the door creaked open, Adrian didn't look up, assuming it was the cleaning staff. He wasn't ready to move, wasn't ready to face the task of telling his employees they no longer had jobs. Mr. Phoenix, the voice was unexpectedly young. I know who attacked your system. Adrian raised his head to see a teenage boy clutching a worn laptop to his chest, dark eyes serious beneath a fringe of black hair. Behind him stood a woman in the gray uniform of the building's cleaning staff, her expression torn between pride and terror. "Marcus, we should go," the woman whispered, her accent thick with anxiety. "Mr. Phoenix is busy." "It's okay, Maria," Adrian said, recognizing the head of the night cleaning crew. His eyes returned to the boy. "What do you mean? You know who attacked the system." Marcus stepped forward, opening his laptop. "It was your brother, Thomas. He hired hackers to plant a dormant adversarial attack in your network 3 months ago. I've been tracking unusual patterns in your system since then." The security team arrived moments later, summoned by Adrian's urgent call. Their faces hardened when Marcus explained how he'd been accessing the company's systems without authorization for months. "This kid should be arrested," the head of security growled. "He's probably working with whoever attacked us." Maria stepped between them and her son, eyes flashing. "My boy is trying to help you. He's been teaching himself coding since he was 7. If he wanted to hurt your company, he would have done it long ago." Adrian studied Marcus, seeing something familiar in the boy's determined stance. He recalled his own teenage years of isolation, the desperate need to prove himself, the doors that remained closed because of who he was rather than what he could do. "Everyone out," Adrian said quietly, except Maria and Marcus. When they were alone, Adrian did something that surprised even himself. He began to talk about David, not the sanitized version he shared with investors or the brave face he showed his employees, but the raw truth of loving and losing someone who had been his partner, his co-founder, his best friend. "6 months ago, we were driving home from dinner," Adrian said, his voice barely audible. "A drunk driver ran a red light. I walked away with a broken arm. David never walked again." Marcus listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving Adrian's face. "The last code David ever wrote is in Sentinel Shield." Adrian continued, "When I saw it being destroyed today, it felt like losing him all over again." The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and unexpected. Then Marcus opened his laptop and began to explain what he'd discovered, not just about the attack, but about the architecture of Sentinel Shield itself. "Your neural network design is brilliant," he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "But there's a vulnerability in how it processes adversarial examples. I've been studying it for months." Adrian watched in astonishment as this 13-year-old boy dissected complex algorithms with the ease of a seasoned engineer. Marcus didn't just understand the code. He saw possibilities within it that Adrian himself had missed. "How did you learn all this?" Adrian asked. Marcus shrugged. "YouTube tutorials, mostly, some books from the library. The rest I figured out by watching your system work." Maria's expression softened with pride tinged with sadness. "He has no one to teach him. At school, they don't understand him. The other children, they call him names because he's different." Adrian nodded, understanding all too well. Being different isn't the problem. The problem is a world that punishes difference instead of celebrating it. Over the next hours, as the night deepened around them, Adrian and Marcus worked side by side, rebuilding what Thomas's attack had destroyed. But they didn't just repair the damage together. They reimagined the entire security architecture, with Marcus suggesting an innovative hybrid approach that combined neural networks with quantum algorithms in ways Adrian had never considered. As dawn broke over San Francisco, casting golden light through the conference room windows, Adrian made a decision. The investors wouldn't return for another presentation, but that didn't mean Phoenix AI was finished. "What would you think about redesigning Sentinel Shield together?" he asked Marcus. "Not as an unauthorized visitor, but as a paid consultant. With your mother's permission, of course." Maria's eyes widened. "He's just a boy with more talent than most of my engineers," Adrian replied. "And if he has half the character you've shown raising him, he'll go further than all of us." The security team returned later that morning, expecting to escort Marcus to waiting police officers. Instead, they found Adrian Phoenix announcing a complete restructuring of the company with a revolutionary new security paradigm at its core. Phoenix AI was built on the belief that everyone deserves protection. Adrian told his assembled team, "Today, we're expanding that mission. We're going to create a company where everyone belongs, where talent matters more than background, where innovation comes from unexpected places, and where we rise together." As Marcus stood tentatively at Adrian's side, the ghost of David seemed to hover in the room, not as a reminder of loss, but as a witness to new beginnings. Two souls marked by different wounds, but connected by the same essential truth that our greatest strength often emerges from our deepest scars. And that sometimes, healing begins when we recognize our own pain in another. The journey of healing isn't about erasing our wounds, but transforming them into sources of compassion and understanding. Through this connection, Adrian and Marcus weren't just saving a company, they were rebuilding themselves, creating something stronger and more beautiful than what had been broken. The transformation of Phoenix AI unfolded over the following months with a momentum that surprised even Adrian himself. What began as desperate damage control evolved into a complete reinvention not just of the company's technology, but of its soul. 3 months after the failed investor presentation, Adrian stood on a different stage, this one at the San Francisco Pride Tech Summit. The audience before him wasn't composed of potential investors, but of industry peers, LGBTQ+ youth, and allies from across the tech landscape. "When I founded Phoenix AI, I believed that success meant proving my worth to those who had rejected me," Adrian began, his voice steady despite the vulnerability of his words. "I thought if I built something impressive enough, it would fill the void left by family rejection. I was wrong." A hush fell over the crowd as Adrian continued, sharing the story of David's death, the company's near collapse, and the unexpected salvation that came in the form of a 13-year-old coding prodigy who had been accessing their systems without permission. "Marcus Chen Rodriguez taught me that true innovation doesn't come from trying to please those who've rejected you," Adrian said. "It comes from creating spaces where everyone belongs, where different perspectives aren't just tolerated, but essential." In the front row, Marcus sat beside his mother, Maria, no longer in her cleaning uniform. Maria now wore the sleek blazer of Phoenix AI's newly appointed head of operations. The company's restructuring had revealed her exceptional organizational abilities, skills that had gone unrecognized during her years managing cleaning crews. The new Phoenix AI security architecture, named Quantum Shield, represented a paradigm shift in cybersecurity. Designed collaboratively by Adrian and Marcus, it incorporated principles that neither could have developed alone. Adrian's industry experience merged with Marcus's unconventional approach to create something revolutionary. Industry analysts who had written off Phoenix AI were now scrambling to understand how a company on the brink of bankruptcy had suddenly leaped years ahead of its competitors. Investment offers poured in, but Adrian evaluated each potential partner based not just on their money, but on their commitment to the company's new core values. The Phoenix Foundation launched alongside the new security product a scholarship program providing educational opportunities and mentorship to underrepresented youth in STEM fields. The David Memorial Fund offered mental health support specifically designed for LGBTQ+ tech workers navigating grief and workplace challenges. Within the company itself, employee resource groups weren't just symbolic gestures, but held real power in substantial budgets. The executive team, once homogeneous, now reflected the diversity of experiences that Adrian believed essential to true innovation. The legal battle with Thomas Phoenix unfolded quietly in the background. Adrian's brother had hired hackers to sabotage the company, hoping to force Adrian into financial dependency that would pull him back under family control. Instead, the attack had catalyzed Phoenix AI's transformation into something stronger than before. Thomas faced legal consequences for corporate espionage, but Adrian took no pleasure in his brother's downfall. Instead, he saw it as another manifestation of the same fear and prejudice that had driven their family apart years earlier. "Hate consumes the hater more than the hated," Adrian told Marcus one evening as they worked late in the lab. My parents rejected me because they feared what they didn't understand. Thomas followed that same path, but we're choosing a different way. For Maria, watching her son blossom under Adrian's mentorship brought both joy and complex emotions. She had spent years trying to protect Marcus from a world that seemed determined to limit him because of his ethnicity, his intelligence, his family's economic status. Now, seeing doors open that she had believed permanently closed, she felt vindicated in her fierce belief in her son's potential. "You gave him chance when others saw only threat," she told Adrian one day. "This is gift I cannot repay." Adrian shook his head. "Marcus saved my company. Maria, if anything, I'm in his debt." The truth lay somewhere between, in the recognition that their lives had become intertwined in ways none of them could have anticipated. What began as a professional relationship had evolved into something deeper. A chosen family forged through shared challenges and mutual respect. On the anniversary of David's death, Adrian took a personal day, the first since founding the company. He expected to spend it alone with his grief, but when he arrived at the cemetery, he found Marcus and Maria already there, standing quietly by David's grave with flowers. "How did you know?" Adrian asked, surprised. Marcus shrugged with the awkward tenderness of adolescence. "You mention him when you're tired, always on Thursdays." I calculated the date. The simple observation, so characteristic of Marcus's perceptive mind, brought unexpected tears to Adrian's eyes. For the first time since the accident, Adrian felt the weight of grief shift slightly, not diminishing, but transforming into something he could carry more easily because it was shared. That evening, Adrian invited Maria and Marcus to his home for dinner, not to discuss work or code, but simply to be together. As they sat around his dining table, the space once filled with silence and shadows of loss now resonated with conversation and laughter. Looking at their faces in the warm light, Adrian realized that family could be chosen, could be built, could emerge unexpectedly from the very ruins of what was lost. The phoenix in the company logo took on new meaning, not just a symbol of personal resilience, but of collective rising, of finding strength in vulnerability, of creating belonging where there had been isolation. Through the window, the San Francisco skyline glittered against the night sky, a constellation of lights representing countless other stories unfolding, other lives intersecting, other possibilities waiting to be discovered. In that moment, Adrian understood that true healing doesn't mean erasing the past, but incorporating it into a present rich with new connections and a future open to unexpected joy. Sometimes our greatest wounds become doorways to our deepest connections, and the family we choose creates roots stronger than those we were born into. For in choosing each other, we recognize not just who we are, but who we might become together. 2 years after the failed demonstration that nearly destroyed Phoenix AI, the company headquarters hummed with activity as employees prepared for a landmark announcement. The expansive atrium, once designed to impress investors, had been reimagined as a collaborative space where teams gathered around circular tables, their diversity reflecting the company's transformed culture. At 16, Marcus Chen Rodriguez had grown several inches taller, though his thoughtful eyes remained the same. Today, he stood beside Adrian Phoenix at the center of the atrium, his new position as Chief Technology Officer making him the youngest executive in Silicon Valley history. The appointment had sparked controversy in industry circles, with critics questioning whether a teenager could handle such responsibility. Adrian had responded with characteristic directness. "Judge the results, not the resume." The results spoke volumes. Under Marcus's technical leadership, Quantum Shield had revolutionized cybersecurity, protecting critical infrastructure against attacks that other systems couldn't even detect. More importantly, the architecture reflected Marcus's unique perspective, an approach born from learning outside traditional pathways, seeing vulnerabilities others missed precisely because he viewed systems differently. Maria watched from nearby, pride illuminating her face. As head of operations, she had transformed Phoenix AI's workplace policies, ensuring that talent could emerge from any background. Her immigrant experience informed initiatives that provided childcare, flexible schedules, and educational support, removing the very barriers that had nearly prevented her son's genius from being recognized. "We're not just announcing a new product today," Adrian told the assembled employees and press. "We're celebrating a new model of what a tech company can be." The Phoenix Foundation had expanded beyond scholarships, now operating coding boot camps in underserved communities across the country. The David Memorial Fund had partnered with major health providers to ensure LGBTQ+ tech workers had access to mental health support tailored to their experiences. Most significantly, other companies had begun adopting Phoenix AI's inclusion framework, not out of charity, but because they witnessed firsthand how diversity drove innovation. What started as one company's transformation was becoming an industry-wide revolution. After the announcement, Adrian found a quiet moment amid the celebration. He opened his phone to a text message from his sister, the only family member who had maintained contact after his coming out. For years, she had been caught between loyalty to their parents and love for her brother. Now, she had finally taken a definitive stand. "Mom and Dad saw your interview," her message read. "Dad wouldn't admit it, but I think he's starting to question everything. They're asking about you. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be there." Adrian felt the complex emotions wash through him, not the desperate yearning for acceptance that once consumed him, but a quieter acknowledgement that healing could take many forms. His worth was no longer tied to their validation. That evening, Adrian returned to his neighborhood to find Marcus sitting on the steps of his building, laptop balanced on his knees. "Shouldn't you be celebrating?" Adrian asked. "Youngest CTO in history deserves at least one night off." Marcus looked up, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about what's next, about legacy." They moved inside and over tea. Marcus shared his vision for expanding the Phoenix Foundation's work into his mother's hometown in Mexico and his father's village in the Philippines, creating technology education centers that would connect rural youth to global opportunities. "The kids there, they're like me," Marcus explained. "They have the capacity, just not the access." Adrian listened, struck by how Marcus's thinking had evolved beyond technical problems to embrace social challenges. The awkward teenager was growing into a leader with both exceptional skill and profound empathy, perhaps the rarest combination in their industry. Later that week, Maria launched her own initiative, a coding boot camp specifically designed for immigrant parents. "Our children learn technology quickly," she explained to Adrian. "But parents need digital literacy too, or the gap between generations grows too wide." The Maria Chen Rodriguez Scholarship for Parent Education became yet another way Phoenix AI challenged industry norms, recognizing that innovation didn't belong exclusively to the young or the privileged. In a full-circle moment that neither could have anticipated, Adrian received an invitation to speak at his former high school, the same place where his journey of rejection had begun when classmates discovered he was gay. Standing before a new generation of students, Adrian shared not just his professional success, but the deeper lessons of his path. "The world will try to tell you who you are and what you're worth," he told them. "Your power lies in deciding whether to believe it." Among the audience sat Marcus, observing his mentor with quiet pride. Their roles had evolved into a complex dance of mutual learning, Adrian guiding Marcus through the business landscape, while Marcus continually pushed Adrian's technical thinking beyond conventional boundaries. Together, they had created something neither could have built alone, a company that served as both shield and sanctuary, protecting against external threats while nurturing internal potential. The phoenix in their logo had been redesigned, incorporating rainbow elements that symbolized not just pride, but the full spectrum of human experience and capacity. On quiet evenings, Adrian sometimes felt David's presence not as a ghost haunting his grief, but as a foundation supporting his growth. The pain of loss had transformed into a deeper appreciation for connection, for the fragility and preciousness of human bonds. The journey from broken shields to chosen family had taught Adrian that true resilience isn't about hardening ourselves against pain, but about remaining open to possibility even after devastation. It wasn't about rising alone, but about rising together, wings interlocked, stronger in formation than in isolation. As Phoenix AI continued to evolve, its greatest innovation wasn't technological, but human. The recognition that authentic leadership creates spaces where everyone can contribute their unique perspective, where vulnerability becomes strength, where wounds become wisdom. The Phoenix rises not by escaping the fire, but by transforming within it, emerging with new capacities precisely because of, despite the flames. In that transformation lies the most powerful truth of all, that our deepest pain, when shared and understood, can become our greatest gift to others. Have you ever found unexpected family in places where you least expected it? Has someone recognized your potential when others overlooked you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Follow Heart Stories for more narratives that explore the complex beauty of human resilience, the power of authentic connection, and the unexpected ways we find strength in each other. Because every story matters, especially yours.